Hey there, friends. Just want to take some time to go over our work. And so today we're working on the square root family. And what I want you to notice after you worked on Desmos, when you graphed y equals f of x equals the square root of x, your starting point is 0, 0. Okay? So that starting point is also your y. Let's change to red here. Is your y-intercept, so hopefully you have your teacher pens out, and that is your starting point. So this graph has both a restricted range like we saw in the parabola, but it also has a restricted domain. So I can only use x values that are greater than or equal to 0. So here, that's my domain. And that's x is greater than or equal to 0. So we know that because these are all the x's that are being used. Sorry, I spelled a little wrong there. Okay, so those are all your x's that are being used. Then it asked about the y values, and here that is your range. And if you look here, here's all the y values that are being used. Those are the y values that are being used, okay? So that is my range, that y is greater than or equal to 0. All right, so now we want to do a review of some of our transformations from the other day. So here's our parent function. That's our parent function, and this we know is a transformation. 3 to the left, 1, 2, 3, and then up 1. So from here, that's my starting point. -3, 1, that's my starting point right there. And so here are all the x's being used, and here are all the y's being used. So that's where my domain and the range come into play. So similarly here, now I'm looking at a new transformation, and that's throwing that negative sign in front. So that's really negative f of x. I'm taking the opposite of the x values. So here's my x values, and then I'm negating them, so that's a flip over the x-axis. So I'm still using the same x's, but now my y's are in the negative area. And then again, my starting point is 0, 0. Okay? All right, now here on C, I am negating inside the house. So that's f of negative x. So that's inside the house. And if it's inside the house, it has to do with the y-axis. So this, I'm taking my x values and I'm flipping them over. So these are now my x's being used, and these are my y's being used. Once again, my starting point for this is 0, 0. Okay? So the reflection, this is going to be a reflection over the y-axis. Now here we have a double one, so it's the opposite of f of negative x. So that's going to be a reflection over the x-axis first, then a reflection over the y-axis. So here are my x's being used, and here are my y's being used. So that's why my domain and range are just negative values here. Okay, my friends, so there are your front teacher notes. And let's go over the learning targets if we could. So the first learning target was to graph a square root function and determine the domain and range, which you did using Desmos. The next one was reflect a function over the x-axis and explain the effects on its equation. So we did that. And then it also said to reflect a function over the y-axis and explain the effects on its equation and graph. And we did that here in C. And then for good measure, we did in D, we did both a reflection over the x and a reflection in the y. So let's take a look at our learning targets. So learning target number 1 is the square root parent function. So if you want to take a minute to copy these down, and then I can pause the video and then I'll explain it. So The square root parent function is starting at 0, 0, and the x's being used are all your positive x values. The y's being used are all your positive y values. So your domain is all values x is greater than or equal to 0, as is your range. So that's the first learning target, is this square root function parent. Learning target number 2 and 3, go ahead and pause the video and get these notes down, and then I'll explain it. So learning target 2 and 3 have to do with reflections over the x and y axis. So a vertical reflection is a reflection over the x-axis. So we're taking our x values and after we put them into the function, we're negating it. So the y values all become negative. So there you go. The red is your first function, and then to reflect it over the x-axis, we end up with our blue function. So that's f of x is the opposite of f of x. The horizontal reflection is inside the house, so that's a reflection over the y-axis. So all the x values are being negated, and they're being sent over to the other side across the y-axis. Okay, my friends, those are your teacher notes for today. And then I want you to do the check your understanding. So pause the video, and then you can come back and look at the check your understanding. So good luck with the check your understanding.